Fish and Rice, Stories from Japan. I'm Toby.
I'm Andri.
And today we welcome Anna on our podcast. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me here.
Anna, you're the founder and CEO of a FemTech company in Kyoto. Yeah. It's called Flora.
Yeah.
And your company has a big mission. You're kind of working to empower women in the workplace by utilizing AI and basically a lot of data to make women's, how can I phrase it, monthly cycles and pregnancy, pre-pregnancy, post-pregnancy, life easier.
You can put it like
put
that.
It simply. I think we can dive into this in more details after, because I'm sure you have a lot to share and you'll be able to explain it much better than I can phrase it. But first, maybe you could introduce yourself a little bit. Where are you from and what brought you to Japan?
Okay, I'm Anna. I'm from Ukraine. I've been in Japan for 6 years, around 6 years. What brought me to Japan? It's a long story. So I came to Japan, 6 years ago. I was a second year student at a Ukrainian university, and I studied international relations. I thought I wanted to become a diplomat.
Okay.
And apart from that, I did a lot of sports. I did karate. And I was part of the national team, and I wanted to go for the Olympics. And I came here to train because I thought I can train, and then education in Japan is pretty good, so I can go to a good uni. So it was like 2 birds, 1 stone for me. Yeah.
And then you decided to come to Kyoto. You're based in Kyoto now directly, or were you somewhere else before?
So I used to be a MEX student. I was getting scholarship to study here, and for 1 year I was getting preparational course, and I was in Osaka, in Mino campus for Osaka University, and I studied Japanese language, Japanese culture, and then so it's like a 5-year program. First year you get this preparatory course, and then you get into university. And on my second year I went to Kyoto University and studied there. I have a law degree from Kyoto University.
And you stayed there?
Yeah. And I'm still there, yeah.
What makes you like Kyoto more than Osaka?
It wasn't a conscious choice at first. I was like, okay, I want to go to a good uni. I want to go either to Tokyo University or Kyoto University. And if I went to Tokyo University, I wouldn't be able to go to my dojo in Osaka, and I wanted to train. So I made it I chose Kyoto. But then halfway through, I stopped doing sports. So here I am still in Kyoto. But I do love Kyoto a lot. Yeah. When I go to Tokyo, I can't stay there for more 10 days. I think 10 days is my limit. I get too anxious. I get
It's really big. It's quite something to go to Tokyo.
It's so big. There's so many people. The buildings are so tall. I don't know. I just don't feel how do I put it? I don't feel... I feel zero importance.
You feel like an anonymous soul.
Yes, like an ant.
But it's interesting what you said about the buildings being tall. I mean, it's not the topic of today's conversation, but from what I know, in Kyoto, because it's such a sacred place with a lot of temples, there are regulations as to how high a building can be built.
Absolutely.
And so the skyline of Kyoto is pretty flat.
Absolutely true.
Makes it more cozy.
They're changing it this year.
Oh no.
So there won't be any more.
So big towers coming to Kyoto.
To Kyoto as well. So you won't see
skyscrapers.
You won't see Higashiyama. I'm not sure about skyscrapers, but definitely higher than they are now. So now it's 10 floors.
Would be interesting if they make it still in a kind of Japanese architecture. So traditional buildings, but new towers. Kind of the future is here.
I don't know. Does that look traditional Japanese to you in Osaka? Well, we'll see, right?
Osaka. Osaka is a concrete jungle.
Yeah. Let's hope Kyoto doesn't become the one as well.
So after all your years of university in Kyoto, you finished your degree, completed your studies, and then you decided to start a company. Is that correct? Did you start right away after university?
So I got into uni, and I actually studied as much as I could for the first semester, and then I got bored and I just hated it. And I thought that if I don't find something interesting to do, I would definitely just quit, because I don't like it. Okay, I love Kyoto University. They help a lot. They gave a lot of opportunity to, for me to go abroad and to go on exchange programs, etc., etc. But I didn't exactly like my classes. So not the uni in general, just my classes. And I didn't like my major. So I started doing random stuff like volunteering or just going for some student organizations, etc., etc. And one of these random things was House Prize. It's a social business competition for people who want to start social businesses.
Okay.
And it's for students. You can get on pitch events on campus, etc., etc. And I went for one, and I was like, "Whoa, that sounds interesting." I like coming up with some business plan and then trying to achieve it, and then thinking of what kind of strategy we can take and what kind of setbacks or drawbacks or difficulties there are. And so I got interested, and then at the end of my first year, I got selected for Kingfisher Leadership Program. It's a Kyoto University program that they do together with Sachiko Kuno. She's a famous entrepreneur. She took her company public twice in the US, and she's I think she's Forbes 100 self-made woman list. She's really cool. She's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome. And she sponsors this program. And I went to Washington, D.C. and then I went to Silicon Valley. I went to Google, Microsoft, and, all these cool accelerators. And I just saw a lot of people around me and they were super cool. I'm like, I want to be in this environment. I want to do something that these people do. So that's when I started to think about my own, something for, something interesting, something cool, something that will happen, that will help other people. And I came back. I don't know, it's getting long. Is it okay?
No, I mean, it's a really interesting story because you went to university to study one thing, and then after just a few months you were like, no, let's stop this. But then you didn't just, close yourself up.
I promised my parents that I'm going to graduate. So I just had to, entertain myself with something to continue going to the university.
You chose a very productive way to entertain yourself.
So I went back to Kyoto and I applied to Phoenix Incubator. If somebody doesn't know, Incubator is a institution that helps startups, ventures grow. They just educate you on, business stuff, accounting, legal issues, etc. And I applied for that one, and that's how it started. It's around 3 years ago, I think. Yeah, so that's the story.
So all of this, was it done in Japanese or was it in English in an international environment?
Good question. So for the incubator, it was completely Japanese. For my university, I have a degree, I attended classes in Japanese. When I went abroad, it was more international, and we went to the US. So there was a lot of Chinese students as well. So
quite a mix of everything.
Yeah, quite a mix of everything.
You said that when you were in Silicon Valley, you also wanted to be that kind of Silicon Valley tech kind of paradise. You wanted to do a company in maybe the tech field. And you also said you want to do something that helps people. So what kind of company have you decided to start and why? Where does Flora come from?
Yeah, so my cousin, around that time, she was suffering a lot of pregnancy complications, and she lost her second child after the childbirth. So it was a huge, a turning point. And also it was a moment when I started thinking, I'm actually interested. There's a lot of issues in healthcare, and in particular when you focus on female health, there's a lot of issues, but there's not enough solutions. And that's something I'm interested in. There's something that I'd like to do. So just people, my cousin, my mom was also having some fertility issues and stuff. So it's actually family context that got me thinking about FemTech.
Something close to you that made you
Exactly. And at the same time, FemTech in the US and in Europe, it was already a thing. There were already big ventures, big fundraising rounds going around. But in Japan, it was still just everybody was like, what, FemTech, FinTech, what do you mean? Yeah, so I thought that's a good gap, because it's a good business opportunity. At the same time, it has like a really I can have some social impact, right? It's something that should be, I don't know, dealt with. There's a lot of space for creating solutions for people. Yeah.
So just to give some context to maybe some listeners that may not be aware, FemTech is a mix of feminine, femme, and technology.
Yeah, female and technology. So it's technology that particularly focuses on like female specific issues. So for example, infertility, period pain, menopause, or some other like gender-based healthcare issues. Yeah.
So it's for women, but not necessarily by women.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you started Flora a few years ago already, 2021?
2020 December. So
okay, just about that time. Now you said that there's a lot of things that can be done, a lot of challenges that women are facing. Maybe could you explain a little bit more to people that are not aware?
Yeah.
I'm sure most women are very familiar with those, but for male listeners, maybe they don't really fully understand what kind of challenges women face.
So first of all, there's actually not enough data in this OBGYN related sphere. So nobody knows, for example, if you have, let's say, some irregular period, how will it exactly affect your life? Does it in a way connect with some menopause disorders, or how does it correlate with infertility? There's still not enough data, because it's a really individual thing, right? Each person is different. There are people who can experience like such a heavy period pain that they're not able to work or do anything, and there are people who don't have these symptoms at all. So it's very individual. We talk about period-related issues, then fertility-related issues. So like infertility treatment right now in Japan is on the rise. There's a huge problem with fertility rates, as you know. Then everything related to childbirth, right? So postpartum depression or some, let's say, pregnancy complications. And then there's also menopause, right? When let's say the hormones in your body, they just change, the way they function changes, right? And there's a lot of change happening in your body in your 50s. So a lot of things related to, especially this like female hormones and this cycle thing, and that's what we mainly like target in FemTech. Although maybe there are some other actually mental health related issue as well, like PMS, right? Some people experience PMDD, so premenstrual disorder, when they cannot control their emotions, yes, before their period, or they have experienced some other really heavy symptoms. So all this go for this like gender-based healthcare.
A lot of different challenges. But what you're saying, if I understand this correctly, is it's very individual, right? So every person has its own, every woman has its own range of challenges. But also there's a high possibility that some kind of issue somewhere could have an impact on another issue. So for example, irregularities with the menstrual cycle could affect the timing or the impact of menopause later down the road.
So that's what we're trying to find out, because there's not enough data on that. So what we're doing is we're creating this kind of ecosystem of solutions when we provide solution for fertility, for menopause, for period, and then we try to gather as much data as possible, like harvesting all this big data, and then we try to find patterns between some issues, between some symptoms, etc., etc. We're still in the middle of it. It takes quite a lot of time and quite a lot of data, but that's our final vision, final goal.
How does it work now on a technical level for you to gather this data or to collect everything you need?
So for example, the solution we're providing to enterprises right now, we have surveys, and we have also like tools for visualizations which employees use, and then we gather data on, for example, in the workplace, how easy it is for you to discuss if you have some infertility issues, right? And you're undergoing treatment, you should take some work leaves to go to the hospital, because like to undergo this treatment.
Yes.
How easy for you to discuss these issues with your boss or with your colleagues, like, or are you able to take a period leave? Yes or no? What kind of symptoms you experience, and on your subjective level, how do they influence your performance? So we gather all this data. Right now we're trying to gather data all over the Japanese companies. Right now it's mostly enterprises, corporations, so
large scale.
IPOs, like there are around 4,000 IPOs in Japan, and we're doing it large scale. We want to do it small and medium enterprises later. Right now it's large scale. So for example, we gather this kind of data for B2C, for like consumers. We have apps, and women track their symptoms, their data inside those apps. We encode it. It's all anonymous, but we use it to make some predictions or to compare them with B2B data, right? With enterprises, and see, oh, actually in your company, I don't know, especially these menopause solutions, they influence the productivity of your employees. So if you increase this kind of help, and provide this kind of solution and access to online OBGYN clinics, let's say, for example, performance of your employees will increase 10% or 20%, and this will be reflected in your revenue, right? So the overall logic's like that. It might be.
It's actually quite interesting, because we know that Japan is a quite patriarchal society, right?
Yeah.
It's very male dominated, and you mentioned that you're really focusing right now on the work environment. And in those companies, there's a hierarchy, there's structure, mostly dominated by men. And, there's also a lot of women there, and those women have the challenges that you just mentioned. So what you're trying to do, if I understand this correctly, is not just collect data to understand this better for women themselves, but also collect this data to offer companies solutions to improve productivity by making women's working conditions more adapted to their needs.
Exactly. Because we think that if the workplace in general, if it doesn't change, nothing will change, right? And so we have solutions like this kind of app, right? And we also have partnership with online clinic. This is a solution that's targeting individuals, right? So that if you need to, you have online access to some OBGYN practitioner surveys, or we also provide some content, like e-learning content on, this kind of issues, right? It's mostly targeted on the company, on organization, to change the way the workplace is operating.
Could you just clarify, maybe for everyone to understand fully, what does acronym OBGYN stand for?
Obstetrics and gynecology.
Okay, so it's like the medical fields, especially for women.
Yes, in Japanese it's sanfujinka. Obstetrics, it's related to childbirth, and gynecology is everything else.
So I think now I have a good understanding of really what you're doing, and I hope people listening right now as well. I want to maybe put this now into the Japanese context, because we're here in Osaka today, and you've decided to start your company in Japan. So my first question would be, why did you decide to take on this challenge here in Japan and not, for example, go back to Silicon Valley and be like, okay, I'm going to do this in California. It's sunny, it's nice, beaches nearby. It's
really nice there. I went there 2 weeks ago. But anyways, my answer is really, really boring.
Okay.
Because I was a student and I promised my parents to graduate, but I wanted to do something on the side, so I just started this company.
Nice. And one thing led to another.
One thing led to another, and here we are. But I'm glad I started it in Japan, because, as I've mentioned, there's a gap, there's a lot of opportunity, I think. And both like economic opportunity, right, for it to be a business, and at the same time there's a lot of opportunity to make some social impact. And I think that's something that, I don't know, it's quite motivational, it's quite cool. I just feel like I like doing it.
What do you feel like are some of the challenges that you faced in the first maybe stages of your company, where you maybe thought, if I would be back in Ukraine or in the United States, I would not have to deal with this right now?
I would still make a venture in the US to get this 100% correct, but still in Japan, bureaucracy, right? You need a paper for everything, and it's just when you're starting with a startup, a lot of lawyers and a lot of like notary public, right? They just don't know what to do with you because it's different from just starting a small enterprise. So there might be some misunderstandings, and some things might be done incorrectly. Like in my case, some things were done incorrectly. I had to correct it myself. But since I have law degree, I do have some knowledge of this, so I can do stuff myself.
So the studies you completed for your parents came in handy right there, right?
Right. Well, at least, yeah, there were some benefits. But I think in the beginning it's very hard to get the legal thing right. It was hard for me, and I was reading a lot of stuff on that, and I had like legal background, so I imagine that for people who don't have that background and aren't that fluent in Japanese, it's probably really hard. And then honestly, I think that if I didn't speak Japanese, I think half of the things that we've done would be impossible. It's just I hope there are more and more foreign entrepreneurs and foreign founders in Japan, but as I see the situation right now, if you don't speak Japanese, it's gonna be like 2 or 3 times harder for you.
Yeah, we had a guest just a couple of weeks ago on a podcast who also started his company. He doesn't speak Japanese to a point where he can... No, his name is Asa. Okay. He is working on a company, on his company, Skyscape, building vertiports, kind of in the aviation industry. And he also mentioned that for many things, he's then dependent on like a Japanese partner to kind of help out with legal paperwork and things like that. Do you maybe have like any specific examples of something where that gave you a big headache and you kind of had to weasel your way through, but that's just the way it is here in Japan? Any specific paperwork that is required for you to start a company, but maybe you can't get without... Or there's just too many?
You know, since my trauma is so big, like my memory is fuzzy about that period of time. I'm just joking. But...
Well, Japanese paperwork is quite something. It's a lot of...
something.
Even just as a regular non-company owner, it's quite a lot of things to do.
Like for example, it's quite specific. But for example, when you create a company, you have to decide like what is the value of your shares, like how much do you split. And for normal companies, you don't create a lot of shares because it's troublesome. You just go for, 1 share 1 month. But when you're a venture and you want to grow and you want to make some equity finance, you need to split this equity to give to other people to get investment for that. And so I had a problem with that because our notary public, he just did the normal way. So I had to go and to change it in the way that's suitable for ventures. And apparently he just didn't know how to do it for startups, right? Yeah. So
that's quite tricky because then you're relying on an external person to handle your case. But if that external person has no experience with the situation that you're in, they will just do what they know and they're familiar with.
I had the same issue with also with my scholarship, right? Because there's not many MEC students in Japan. So when you want to figure out what's going on with your visa on how to get, like, can you do some side hustle? Like, how do you combine that and your scholarship? Also, lawyers or notary publics won't tell you a lot because it's just such a niche case that they don't know. It's a gray zone in law as well. So yeah, there's a lot of problems with that.
But you've made it through. You've gotten through a round of funding, right?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
How did you approach this experience of gathering funding? So you, just to kind of put the context again, you're trying to start a FemTech company in Japan, a country that's very male-dominated. was there an initial interest into investing in these kind of solutions, or were people maybe just thinking, oh, I don't understand this, or this is not useful, or why would I spend money on that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of issues with that. I mean, because FemTech, as I mentioned, it was getting traction in Europe and in the United States. So it was something that people talked about, right? But venture capitalists, right? It's mostly, they don't operate according to logic. They mostly operate on how they feel, or how would they feel if there was solution to this problem or something. There's a lot of betting, right?
Okay.
And when you're talking to a guy and he doesn't understand what I'm doing, right? So maybe he knows that FemTech is it's cool, it's getting traction in Europe, but since it's not something that he would personally use or knows exactly how to use this app, he might pass on, even if it sounds like a good opportunity, right? So there's a lot of there's this gap of understanding. So of course it's way easier to talk to female venture capitalists because they might at some point in time experience this kind of issue themselves, right? So they can relate. But there's really few female venture capitalists. So yes, there's an issue like that. Not because they have some particular bias, I would say, but just because they can't relate. And you don't invest in something that you wouldn't personally use, right? So there's systemic issue.
It's like this Warren Buffett's rule of thumb for investing, right? Just invest in something you can understand.
Exactly.
So how do you overcome this challenge?
You just talk to a lot of people and you find this one person that goes, okay, yeah, I believe in you, you go. That's it. And for fundraising, the normal rate is you talk to 50 funds and then one might get you. So there's just a lot of, I don't know, believing in yourself and not giving up, and then you can get it.
So since you started this company, and so you've secured a round of investments and you started building a team around it, you're working in something very specific, because I feel, from my understanding, on the one side you need a very technical team, since you're utilizing AI to analyze the data and collect the data. So you need a technical team, but at the same time you're working in FemTech, right? So it's it's somewhat of a medical field, I would say. So you need medical expertise from doctors and so on. You have a background in law.
Yeah.
So how do you surround yourself with those two people, or the two types of people, to kind of build a team able to kind of realize your vision?
I don't know. For me, it was just talking a lot about what I want to do and talking with many people. So my co-founder, he's actually also from Ukraine. His name is Ivan, and he has PhD in biomedical engineering.
Okay.
So he's mostly in charge of the technology. How I met him, I went to some Hanami event, and then he was there and hi, okay, I'm doing a startup. I want to do this, and this. And he was like, oh, I have PhD in engineering. Maybe I can help you. And that's how we started doing the thing together. And then our CEO, he's Japanese, but I also met him 2 or 3 years ago. He was just he messaged me on Facebook saying, oh, you do some interesting stuff. Can I talk to you about that? I'm like, yeah, sure. Let's hang out in Kyoto and see, maybe we can do something together. Right?
Interesting.
And then you go and talk to some maybe doctors and say, look, I want to do this for these people, and I want to have this way. I want the world to change it in this way, right? And they're like, okay, I think I can help you because it sounds cool, right? So it's just about getting a lot of people on board to, and believing in the thing that you're doing and just wanting to collaborate and maybe help you in some way. So I wouldn't say that it's the founder has to be 100% technical or medical in our case. The founder has to get these people in one team and make everybody work together. That's the only goal of a founder and CEO.
Get the team behind a common goal.
Exactly.
And keep everyone kind of motivated on a clear vision.
Yeah.
in terms of now building the company as you're growing, how do you feel like maybe your background or your experiences have maybe shaped the way the kind of company you're trying to build?
Okay, first of all, we're really international. Half of our members are like not Japanese, let's say non-Japanese, international. We have a lot of workers working remotely as well. And I think that's our strength. Because in the beginning, we wanted to do something, like because we were in Japan, we wanted to, like build according to the way companies are built here. But soon I understood that that's not something that we need to do, because since we have this kind of international expertise, international background, we should utilize it. It's not our weakness, it's our strength. So, for example, for B2C industry, for apps, or it's called like consumer SaaS, software as a technology, the market isn't that developed in Japan. And when you compare to, for example, Ukraine, there's a lot of companies that create apps and create this kind of consumer technology and target it to the US.
Ukraine is quite tech savvy. I was just as a side note, I was reading an article that now, unfortunately, due to the war, a lot of Ukrainian immigrants are in Poland, and they're completely reshaping all kinds of industries there because they're utilizing tech in things like restaurant orders and things like that, which Poland is not so familiar with, and it's kind of
exactly as you said. So we have this team that has expertise on building consumer SaaS for the US and building for the US. That's much more the competition rate is much more higher. There is much more difficulties, right? And then we have this team that can adjust to Japanese reality and maybe bring something to the Japanese market. So I think because of my background, we have this kind of international approach to issues that we face in Japan. So we're totally different from other Japanese startups.
So you're utilizing this as a competitive advantage.
Exactly, it's a competitive advantage.
How is it's not that developed yet in Japan, but are there other companies that are trying to achieve something similar? And how would you say yours is different?
FemTech, right? So there's a lot of companies that provide, it's kind of technology, but in my view, it's quite analog. So, for example, talking to doctor through chat, right? Or like online, some apps, but if you look at them, it's just like online magazine and they're sending the same information to all the users, right?
So it's not personalized.
Yeah, it's not personalized. There's no AI, there's no machine learning. It's just, you're kind of utilizing technology. That's cool, but maybe we can do something bigger. Maybe we can dream bigger. Then there's a lot of companies that are selling supplements, D2C brands, pills. How do you call them in English?
Pills?
Pills for wait.
The hormones?
Yeah. Contraceptive pills.
Contraceptive pills. Yeah.
Yes. Because they're getting traction in Japan. There's like 5% of women that are drinking them, but there was around 2 or 3 huge ventures. Well, depends on what you mean huge, but let's say they raised a few $1 million.
Didn't they also recently change the law for the morning after pill to be available over the counter? Whereas until just a few weeks ago, it used to be that you have to go to the doctor, get a doctor prescription.
Exactly.
That's a big step forward.
Yeah, finally.
A bit late, but
finally we're here. But this pills business, everybody thought that it will be growing really much, and there was a lot of money that was pouring there, but the rates aren't rising. So a lot of startups are going actually bankrupt. But so supplements, pills, then what? Online clinics, telemedicine, D2C brands, and it's actually that's it. There's not a lot of startups that are doing something with data, or some hardware startups that are doing some interesting stuff in Japan.
They're more basically providing existing services in a maybe digital format, removing the need to move physically. So basically they're solving the problem of maybe an aging population that cannot really move so much or go around, but not really solving the problem at the core of understanding how everything is connected.
Yeah, I would say that there's not a lot of innovation in this sphere in Japan. And a lot of founders that are that are working in this space, a lot of teams aren't technical. So they know marketing, they know how to sell stuff. They can build a brand and sell it as D2C. That's also cool. But is it really FemTech? Or is it that tech? It might not be. So yeah, I would say there's not a lot of technology involved in this sphere in Japan right now.
And so in your experience now running the company, you face the challenges of getting it started, you face the challenges of raising money, building a team. How is it for you to run the company as a woman in Japan specifically? Do you feel that you've ever faced challenges, discrimination perhaps, that maybe people didn't recognize you as a founder and CEO of the company and be like, well, are you really? Is it you? Is someone else running it and you're just the face of the company? Have you ever been in these kind of situations, or has it actually been, to your surprise, maybe more open than you thought?
That's a good question. I would say definitely not directly. I don't think I've ever been like this directly discriminated, but as I mentioned, there's a lot of there's a lack of
prejudice,
lack of understanding, sometimes. Like, who are you talking to, right? It depends. For example, when we want to sell our B2B solution, it depends on what CEO says, and it depends whether mostly he, or let's say we also sell to HRs. So it depends whether there are some women in the team who can say, oh yeah, we actually need this stuff, right? So it's mostly, lack of understanding, I would say. And apart from that, there's just not a lot of female entrepreneurs. So you kind of feel, I do feel not weird all the time, but you do feel a bit different because you're not Japanese, right?
You don't have anyone to relate to.
Exactly. At this point, I really don't care because I'm always different, right? Because there's some, startup event and there's not many foreigners. So I'm used to this feeling. I don't care about it, but I can imagine that a lot of people would be a little bit intimidated, Like, can I actually do this? Am I actually suited to this job? I can imagine that happening.
That's preventing more people from taking the first step to start a company.
I think that's true. Yeah.
What do you think will be maybe required to change so that the environment seems more accessible, so that people take more initiatives to start companies, whether men or women?
Yeah, that's a really tough question.
I know.
That's a really tough question.
Maybe there's no answer today, but
I do think that education has to change in Japan. I do think that students aren't encouraged that much to actually do something on their own. I think that education is quite passive. At least that's what I experienced in Kyoto University. I also think, I've thought about it for a while, why in FemTech there's not much innovation here in Japan. And I actually thought that, for example, if you take Kyoto University and you have engineering faculty and you have 800 people there, I think there were 30 women, 30 girls or 40 girls. And when you start a technical startup, mostly you need somebody in the team to be technical. So I just think there's not enough, there's a much smaller pool of talent for STEM in Japan because it's mostly male dominated. So I think education has to be changed. And I just think in general, students have to be more encouraged to do something on their own. And then in general, people have to be more tolerant to risk, right? It's getting talked about a lot. Yeah, so I don't have the exact solution, but
how do you manage this kind of how do you balance the stress and pressure from running that company and now that you've actually, maybe starting it was the easiest, the most difficult and the easiest, but now you actually have to run it, and I can imagine there's a lot of pressure, a lot of challenges that you face. And you just mentioned the huge amount of risk. A lot of people maybe depend on you. How do you balance this pressure and kind of keep your mind sharp on the goal you want to achieve?
Yeah, well, the further you get, the more people are involved and the more responsibility you have, right? I think one thing for me is my co-founder. Like, we do a lot of stuff together and we're like, okay, should we do this? Okay, we both decide that we want to do this. As a team, we agree, and then our CEO, right? So it's I'm not alone, right? There's a team that agrees with me, and there's some vision that I explain to these people. I trust these people, and we can come up with a solution together, right? So it's important. The second thing is, it might sound weird, but like, I have nothing to lose. Like, what do I lose? I can imagine that for people in their 30s or 40s or 50s, it's different. But like, for me right now, I'm just, I don't know. Yeah, it's risk, but like, what else am I supposed to do? I'm just having fun. Yeah, I'm like utilizing other people's resources. I'm fundraising other people's money, right? It's a huge responsibility, but I'm taking it seriously. I explain to them what I want to do. I have a team that wants to do it. If something doesn't go well, first of all, we'll try to figure it out and maybe make it go well. And then if it doesn't, that's the world we live in.
So which stage would you say Flora, your company, is at the moment? It's going into its third year. Is that third year?
Yeah.
You have clients.
Yeah.
You have funding. Where are you at now, and where do you want to take it next?
Okay. We are now at actually realizing that like some of the direction we want to grow are super promising, and we just recently got a huge like corporate partner that decided to step in and help us take this solution not only in the domestic market but also for the Southeast Asia, etc. So
congratulations.
Thank you. There's a lot of opportunity. As I mentioned, there's a lot of responsibility. Can we actually not screw up, right? And do everything right? So I think it might be the most challenging phase, but I always say that. Like, I don't know. Each year I'm saying, oh my God, this is the busiest I've ever been. And then next year just beats the previous one. So for now, it's the most challenging part, because there's a lot of people trusting, a lot of people trust put in us, and we have to act upon it right now and not to, upset someone's expectations, and to actually deliver the solution we are promising to deliver.
So you're planning to take the company in a way overseas, right? Expand the market.
Yeah.
That brings up a whole new range of interesting questions, actually. So I'm very curious now, because you started this in Japan in this very specific context of male-dominated society and women struggling maybe to have the resources they need at work to, maybe just simply feel comfortable, but also maybe be more productive and perform better. That was the kind of context where you started your company and where you tried to provide solutions for. How does this now translate into a Southeast Asian context? I mean, the cultures are different, the ways of maybe talking about these problems are also different. I'm thinking some Southeast Asian countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, have a large Muslim majority. I'm not sure if in the religious context as well this. How do you approach this?
One good thing about technology and data, it's quite there are some culture-specific aspects, but you can take it worldwide. And maybe putting aside the element of corporate culture, just for Asia or for Southeast Asia or for Southeast Asia, there's still a lot of issues with access to like this technology that provides well-being and like OBGYN practices, etc., etc. And just by at first empowering the individual, right, to raising their health literacy. For us, we're actually also working right now for women that are working in factories.
Okay.
Right, directly for manufacturing and production line. And when you increase their performance, as I've mentioned, just 10%, it increases the overall revenue and of the factory and of the company. So we're not focusing on cultural specific elements right now. We're focusing on data and how to improve the well-being and this maybe alleviate some issues for individuals.
So a majority of the task you're taking on is not necessarily about the AI data part. It's more how you can communicate and educate around those issues.
Yes, that's also true. So, for example, I know that in some factories in Vietnam, so there are women that are like, say for cars, they're creating seats.
Okay.
They're like sewing
the seats together.
Yes, something like that. I hope I'm right. And you can't have like a toilet break for 4 or 5 hours because every shift is decided.
That's very strict.
Yeah, that's very strict for everybody. So how do you approach this from like corporate perspective? How do you change this shift if somebody is not feeling well today, right? Because of there are some like period related issues or any other issues. How do you change the system of the shift and how do you provide this like how to increase well-being for each individual? So that's something to think about, and that's something that we're trying to solve right now.
What do you feel is the most challenging? Is it to get the women on board on maybe utilizing technology, open up about their own challenges, or to get the bosses on board and to get them to understand that if they are being more considerate of their female employees, they'll have a kind of better outcome? And it's kind of tricky because the way I see it is, on the one side you have a core physical challenge, like some women are in pain, have discomfort, and on the other side you're trying to convince someone that it's not about the woman's pain, it's about how you can make more money out of that, right? So it's kind of also then sort of maybe ethical or personal.
Both are difficult, and both are something that a company that has this enterprise sales have to think about it, because you need to sell, and when you're selling to HRs. You need to persuade HRs, but it's not just about selling, it's also about how your product is used. So both are the issues that you have to look at. For us, we have some expertise in B2C, so consumer product. We have apps that are used by like right now it's 70,000 women. So at least we have some expertise in how to engage with customers without needing to engage with HR. Yeah, so basically utilizing this expertise and at the same time trying to persuade HRs or CEOs or managers. Both are the challenges. I can't say that something like just one thing is important. It's if your solution is so they bought your solution, but nobody uses it for a year. Nobody's giving you a contract for the next year. So
that's very true. But you mentioned you've gotten so far about 70,000 users on board. I imagine that's a lot of data as well. But you said since all of these challenges are very personal to each woman, and there's a need for a lot of data to be able to really find potential patterns and links between several issues. How much do you have any idea of
how much data?
Yeah, how much data do you need? How many women do you need to sign up?
A lot. There's no definite question, definite answer. The answer is the more the better.
The more the better. Well, fair enough.
So, well, at least we aim for like 1 to 5 million users. We need them. We want to get there. Can we do this pattern recognition or like finding patterns with fewer users? Probably we can. So it's very hard to answer this question, but the more the better.
I have a very it may be a stupid question, but since you're doing this by distance, how can you ensure that when someone downloads the app and enters the data, it's actually a woman entering valid data and not maybe someone pretending or...
So there are ways in machine learning to clean data. So for example, we see, I don't know how fast they answer to questions. Maybe she just like tapped like this, or I don't know, she was just answering A all the time, or like in general this answer could be just random. You can calculate that. You can never be probably 100% sure, but the bigger data set is, the less this error will be. Yeah.
And is there a way to make sure that besides maybe wrong answers, it's maybe actually a woman answering the question and not the data coming from a man just, I don't know, playing with the app or trying to falsify data? Can you figure that out as well through this?
As I mentioned, there's always going to be an error, right? So it's... it would just mean whether it's statistically significant or not. So our data science team will figure it out.
Yeah. It's like the edit it in post. You have, but it's good to have the right people to support you and help you to kind of solve this. Maybe I wanted to kind of slowly wrap up this conversation. I wanted to ask you if you have some advice for people that are interested in starting companies in Japan, for women to start companies here in Japan, and maybe if you have specific resources that you thought this really helped me a lot to get started.
Okay. I think not being afraid to be different is very important when you start your own company, because you grow on these differences. So knowing how different you are and making it into strengths, I think it's one of the most important things a founder can do. Some resources, I would suggest getting people around you to help you. Not just, locking up in your garage and trying to do something on your own. That's not how things are done nowadays. There's a lot of accelerators, so like Plug and Play, or I was in Phoenix, it's in Kyoto. There's also a lot of in Tokyo, in Shibuya, queues, etc., etc. So look at places, look at gatherings around you, try to engage with as many people as possible. Look at governmental websites. So in Kyoto, it's Kyoto Chamber of Commerce or Kyoto Prefecture. In Osaka, it's also something like Ministry of Economy Osaka branch. Yes. I think it exists. Sign up to these newsletters. Try to get heard. Participate in some pitch events, and just figure out people you need to talk to.
You have to put yourself out there.
You have to put yourself out there. You have to listen to the feedback you're getting, and
maybe go to Hanami parties as well.
That's true. Yeah. Don't be afraid to mingle with people, because that's how you find your teammates and people who will do collaborations with you. So
thank you. I think that sounds like very good advice.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would have done different if, with the experience you've gathered so far, if you look back and you had to do it again, anything you'd change?
But I mentioned this. At first I was trying to do the Japanese way, the way that these domestic startups are done, and then I tried to be like a perfect Japanese entrepreneur with my perfect Japanese and stuff. But then I realized that I'm not, and I will never be, and that's okay, because that's my strength. We can have overseas team of developers that worked in way more advanced contexts than their counterparts in Japan, and we can hire them at maybe the same price, right? Or we can have marketers and product managers that faced issues that people in Japan never faced, right? Because they were working for the American or European market. And that's the strength. Also, speaking English, it might be a strength because you can do your research. It sounds maybe strange, but there's a lot of companies in Japan that are super domestic minded. So they don't know what happens outside of the world, outside of the bubble. So just keeping on track, understanding what's happening outside. Like in 2-3 years, it will come here. So it's just the way to predict the future. I would say knowing. For me, it's also knowing my strengths. I didn't come to it overnight. I had some time.
Thank you for all the insights.
Yeah.
That was very, very interesting. I'm sure we could talk a lot more.
Yeah.
Because we could dive deep into FemTech.
Yeah.
Is there maybe one thing that's important to you that I didn't ask you about and you feel like I would like to share this today?
I don't know.
Any insights from your data? Any points? Any upcoming events people should look out for, or any big dreams for how you see Flora in 5 to 10 years from now?
Yeah. We're always looking for interesting people. So maybe if somebody who's watching us are interested,
reach out.
Yeah, reach out, hit us up. Maybe we can talk.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
We'll have links in the description so they can find you.
Yeah,
Yes.
awesome.
Well, thank you for being so open, sharing everything. Before we wrap up, I think Andrew prepared a few questions for us. As usual, it's time for trivia.
Okay.
Trivia questions. Yay. Okay, so an answer to the question would be a number. The closer you get, the better it is. We don't have prizes, but you will compete against Toby. Probably you will have a little bit edge, hopefully.
You have the advantage. You know the field.
Do I?
Yes, hopefully. So you will be first to answer as an expert, and Toby will follow up with his answer.
Yeah.
There is a company, probably famous. I'm not an expert on this. It's called Natural Cycles. It's a Western company. It's an app, and they claim to have quite a few users. How many users do they have? It's a FemTech company.
I know they have FDA clearance. I know that. How many users they have? A few millions, I would say.
Okay, good. How many few? Would it be like 10 or 2? 2 is few. 10
2
is
is
also
few. 10.
Natural cycles.
Yeah, you can guess what it
Damn,
tracks,
I go with
right?
5.
5 million?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say something crazy because you said they claim to have. So I'm assuming the number is maybe overblown. So if you say 5,
I don't say claim to have. It's on their website.
Well,
so I don't
well,
know.
so they claim. I'm gonna
use
say they claim 15 million.
15 million. Okay, it's 2.5 million.
Well, you're much closer.
Actually
than
few, but yeah, you win this round.
Well, that will be close to your target data pool. So
Yeah,
you can get there too.
Exactly.
Okay, let's go to the next tech. And is it FemTech? Bumble is a dating app that claims to be female empowering app.
Yeah.
And the owner or the founder is a woman who is one of the first very young billionaires in the world. And how much estimated is her worth?
That's hard.
But there is a clue.
From what
She's
I know,
a billionaire,
she
right?
used to work for Tinder, right? And
Yeah,
left
she
that
quit Tinder and she
quit
started Bumble, which is like female empowering dating app, which actually, by the way, has 57% of male users, which is strange, but what would be your guess?
Bumble was a thing last year. I remember that.
How much
How
is
much?
she as a,
Okay,
as
I
a
would
founder
definitely
and her company's
say
worth?
less than 10, probably.
Less than 10 billion.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I'd say maybe less than 5.
Okay.
So I would say, I don't know.
What would
But
be
how
your
much
guess?
is Bumble? I don't know how much is Bumble. 10 billion? 20 billion?
What is your guess? Number. Give me the number. It's just a guess. So yeah, the clue is she's a billionaire, or she considered to be a billionaire by Forbes, meaning that it costs at least 1 billion, 4 billion.
I'll say 1.3.
1.3 billion. The answer is 1.5 billion.
Oh, for once I'm close.
Toby, you got the better end
Getting
of
closer.
this guess.
I think this is the only second time in like weeks of doing these questions that I get closest.
Closest. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got
one time I got the right number.
Exactly right. So we have like 25. This is 25th episode, and he got only one correct answer.
Pretty miserable rate here, success rate.
But I'm on this side. I'm only asking questions. So I never answer questions. So like, I'm
You
kind
got
of
the easy part.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
Last question is about Japan and business. How many female business managers or CEOs are there.
In general or in like big enterprises?
It's in general. This was a survey last year. They were asking different companies and they were asking how many people on like a board of directors or CEOs are in the companies.
8.8 something.
Okay.
Percent?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is the number a percentage?
Yeah, percent of female directors and executives.
I've seen some numbers, either 8.8 or 10.3, something like that.
Am I too pessimistic? I want to say more like, I don't know, 5 or so.
5%?
Yeah.
The answer is 8 or close to 8. It's like average. So it was 7.9 or something like that.
Oh.
So the answer on the article is 8.
Yeah.
Do you by any chance know the percentage for like a country like the US?
No.
So, but this is for small and medium enterprises as well. For corporate, like big IPOs, it's 1.1. 1.1.
Yeah, that's more like what I thought. Just
Yeah.
That's miserably low.
Yeah, in Japan is known for having mostly male kind of CEOs and directors.
Yeah.
Well, Anna, thank you for your time coming all the way from Kyoto. Thank you for answering all my very tricky questions. But it was certainly very interesting. And thank you for maybe sharing. I think it's important to talk about that. You're the founder and CEO of Flora. We'll put all the links in the descriptions for all the women here in Japan and soon in Southeast Asia who want to go find solutions. And all the company owners or managers or HR managers listening to us looking for solutions for their companies. Please go check it out.
Yeah.
This was Fish and Rice, Stories from Japan. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next week. Bye.
Bye.